We're going to start things off with the pledge, and I'm going to have Principal Platt introduce our pledge leader for tonight.
Thank you, Ted. We have the honor of having one of our fourth grade students here at Main Street School, Miss Alana Caraselli, who has in the fourth grade in Miss Wilson's class. So thank you to the Caraselli family for supporting this. And Alana, you may go ahead and lead us in the pledge and the mission statement. Thank you.
Thanks. Please stand. Place your hand on your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the
United States of America
and to the republic
for which it stands,
one
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, justice
for all. SoCal Union Elementary School District Mission Statement. Staff, students, parents, and the community share the responsibility for each child's success. We're committed to ensuring that each student develops the skills and confidence for lifelong achievement and is prepared to make a positive contribution to our world.
Perfect, Alana. Thank you. So, Alana, I have, like I mentioned, I have a certificate of recognition that you will be receiving in the mail. And I have one right here. So, Alana Caraselli is a fourth grade student at Main Street Elementary School. Alana is a fantastic student, artist, friend, sister, and daughter. She is in student leadership and making the most of it in our virtual world or setting. She is truly a role model student who is always on task in following the Main Street way. Alana is also very patient, kind, helpful when she is collaborating with her peers. She is a very driven person who always puts forth her best effort, no matter what the task is. She is dedicated and a true problem solver. For example, when technology glitches occur, she is there to offer support to her teacher in a way to solve the issue. Alana is also a talented piano player, and we are very grateful to have Alana at Main Street, and we can't wait to see where her bright future leads her. Alana, that is awesome. That is really an awesome write-up. And have you been playing piano for a long time?
A year and a half.
Great. And do you enjoy playing it?
Yes, it's really fun.
Great. And you're also an artist as well, too. Do you paint, or what do you do for art?
I like to paint and draw.
Okay, great. Any of your drawings behind you there? I see some books. You must like to read too.
I love to read.
Awesome. That's great. I'm going to let some other, go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's my favorite pastime.
That is great. That's awesome. I'm going to have some other board members ask you any questions, or else I could just chat with you all night. Anybody else have any questions?
I'd love to hear more about the types of books that you prefer. Do you have any special series or any recent books that you've read that you've really enjoyed?
Well, I love the Land of Stories, and I love fantasy books with like mythical creatures like dragons, fairies. I also like this book, West and East. They're really good too. I love adventures.
I haven't heard about East and West. I'll have to check those out. Thank you, Alana.
Anybody else would like to jump in there? Okay. With that, Alana, Jen.
Yeah.
I was just going to say thanks for being here, and I'm sure that technology help is greatly appreciated nowadays. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming, Alana.
Yes, thank you. We love being able to hear from our students. So thank you for taking some time out of your night and sharing with us.
All right, Alana, thank you for coming. It was awesome meeting you. And you're one awesome kid too. So we're gonna move on with the meeting and the excitement begins. Thank you again. With that, Linda, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Trustee Rodriguez,
Here.
Trustee Jackson Miller,
Here.
Trustee Izant Gonzalez,
Here.
Trustee Friedman,
Present.
Trustee Donley.
Present.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to adopt the agenda as it stands?
Jen, I'll make the motion.
First, Jen's first.
I'll second. Carolyn.
Carolyn. All in favor? Aye.
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 Hi.
Any opposed? None. Consent agenda. Is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda as it stands?
Sure. I'll make the motion. This is Amanda.
Okay. First, Amanda. Second.
I'll second. Carolyn.
Okay, there's no resolutions in there, so let's go with a vote. All approve?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay. Do we have any public communications?
I do not have any on text or any previously received.
Okay. Safe to move on then. Okay. Okay, we're gonna move on with our standing reports and we'll go with Michelle.
Good evening, everyone. Yeah, I'm going to give you guys a quick update. So we had our first safety committee meeting of the year, which might sound a little funny, seeing we're in a mostly virtual environment, but part of our JPA requires that we still hold 4 safety committee meetings per year. And so it was nice. This particular meeting, normally we talk about, how to prevent injury on campus in different ways to promote ergonomics. But this was kind of an opportunity to talk about different safety features and input from principals about what the coming year might look like on their campuses. So that was really an interesting meeting. Also had a training with the county office for the LBOP, and because who doesn't love to say the LBOP, which will be yet another item that'll be brought to the board in December along with first interim, and it's in conjunction with our LCAP. And just to give the board some more input on where we've been in 1920 and where we're going in 2021. It's a kind of a new interim report that ties in both the instructional component, what Dr. Kiernan does on her end, and then the business component, what we do over on our side, and how they kind of mesh together for an annual report for the board. And so I'll be bringing that to you guys in December. Also had an opportunity to have our second meeting on the small cohort committee, which I know Superintendent Turnbull will talk to you more about later, and enjoyed the process. And it's always nice to be on a committee with my peers that are from different areas I don't get to spend a lot of time with. Also, I sat in on the district or the county-wide superintendent town hall, which I know, again, Superintendent Turnbull is going to talk to you guys more about later. I just wanted to say that I am, as a non-participant on a town hall meeting, it was a great time. It's very rare I get to have that luxury. I really enjoyed all listening to the superintendents across the county talk about reopening or coming back live, and just the continuity amongst our county and with all of our leaders it was a really great meeting to listen in on. Also had the opportunity to, with Superintendent Turnbull, to meet with SEA on their monthly meetings, and I was asked to join in, and those meetings are always very interesting to get to talk to union representation and kind of work through things with them. So that's me in a nutshell for the last couple of weeks.
Thank you. Scott.
Yes, sir. A few quick updates. Yesterday, we had our administrative council meeting. Just thought I'd give a couple of highlights from that because we had our ELD TOSA, Barbara Hubner, come in and present to us on some items regarding ELD and our EL students. And it was just very well crafted in terms of the data that was presented. I think most of us can recite that we have, see if I get this right, 48 students who are either at risk of being long-term English learners or are long-term English learners. And so it really kind of brought a very specified number of students who need the most support in that area. And she shared the work that she's doing with the EL specialist. And the most masterful part of the presentation, in my opinion, was how she melded it with some of the work we're doing with Nicole Anderson on racial equity and really getting that thought process across that ELD is a matter of equity. And so the work that's being done there is very powerful, and we were glad to have a presentation in ADCO about it. I wanted to let the board know that the universal screener that Student Services Director Eric Olson talked to you about previously, there is a training happening for that tomorrow for our counselors and our psychologists. So still a lot of steps to go in that, but the tool has been identified and we're getting training on it. So things are picking up steam on that end where we can more proactively find and identify students who need some of our services rather than waiting for them to come to us. Also wanted to let the board know that I have a Zoom scheduled tomorrow to meet with a representative from CABE, the California Association of Bilingual Educators, and we're going to talk with them. I'm going to talk with them about possible consulting services, of course, needing to know the parameters and the costs and everything, but to help springboard our efforts at getting a team together to look at the possibility of dual immersion. So of course we can do that ourselves, and we will do it ourselves if the partnership doesn't work. But CABE is the leading voice on bilingual education in our state, and I think it could really help accelerate the process if we had somebody from their organization work with our team that we'll put together to look at how it could possibly benefit our district, a dual immersion program. Also wanted to let the board know that we have just the very beginning stages of working to get back on the front burner the idea of bringing a science focus to Santa Cruz Gardens. So as you know, we had a shift in leadership at Santa Cruz Gardens, and now that that is kind of underway, we wanted to get that back on the front burner. If you remember, we last spring pre-COVID, we kind of had a discussion about the possibility of a dual immersion program when we finally get it up and running, being at the gardens, for the idea of double bang for your buck, so to speak, of getting a good program up and running there and having it be a magnet for enrollment. And then in good deep conversation with the staff, kind of wanted to shift that focus and have the idea of still having a curricular focus there that might, a specialized curricular focus that might draw and attract greater enrollment there. But the staff wanting that to be science, that's really where their passion was. And so we kind of moved that back to the front burner and started the conversation with the interim principal, Chris Alimos, and I think that we're going to have some good action steps coming soon on kind of maybe bringing that as a brand for Santa Cruz Gardens. Let's see, it was mentioned earlier about the COE town hall and the press conference, double day of getting the communication out there about the gradual return to in-person learning, which I'll definitely talk about more during the presentation, but mainly wanted to give a shout out to Dr. Ferris Sabah and all the support that we've gotten from the county office, and equally importantly, just the collaboration from all 10 district superintendents. And just like all of our teams here at the district office, rely on that collaboration to vet your thinking and to get the best practices and best ideas. That has meant a world to me to have those other 9 colleagues to have that team with. I've said it before and I'll say it again. That's not the norm in every county, where you really truly look at that team as a team that you can rely on. And I'm just very thankful for it. Finally, I just want to thank all the different teams in the district, including labor, CSEA, SEA, all the groups, administrators, as you know, these last few months more than ever, and especially as we start gearing up towards transitioning once again, possibly to a hybrid model. It just has felt like more and more, regardless of role, we just all get together on a task force or on a team and think about how to best move the district forward. And I really appreciate everybody involved in that. But it really starts at the top of each organization with the presidents, Corey Montanez and Gordon Barrett. They probably are tired of my phone calls, but they never act that way. And they always are willing to listen to what's happening and inform their membership and work with us on moving the district forward on everything that we're having to deal with right now. So that is my report for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. You're busy. Is there, do you have anything that Jessica wanted to share, or should we move on?
I'm sure that she had a lot to share.
Okay, yes.
To touch bases specifically on that, but
okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Just wanted to double check. Okay. Do we have anybody from CSEA here?
I do not think CSEA, no.
Okay. And then what about SEA?
Yes, Alyssa Carver is with us tonight. Hi, Alyssa.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Alyssa. Cute little doggy there.
Oh, yeah. He's staring at me right now.
Okay, what do you have anything to report out on? I'm sorry.
I don't think so. I know a lot of what Scott says, and appreciative of all the extra hard work that everyone's doing. It's not easy. So I think just deep breaths and keep on. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's move on to our trustees. Phil, I'll start off with you. You're over there on my left.
So it occurred to me that both items are COVID related. So I'll talk about the town hall and the small cohort meetings at our agenda item.
Okay, very good. Jen?
I have nothing to report on tonight. Thanks.
Okay. Carolyn?
So I was able to listen in on the COE town hall. It was very informative, and it was great to hear from Dr. Sabah and all the superintendents and see how everyone is working together. That was great. And I also had 3 more sessions of my master's in governance since last time, on collective bargaining and on school finance. And I have to say that I was already very grateful for Michelle, but that further cemented my gratitude for everything that you do, your attention to detail, and just making the numbers just easy for us board members to understand. So thank you. That's it from me.
I'll second that. Amanda?
Hello. Nothing particularly to report. I just wanted to, I think everyone gets Rose Felisetti's emails, but a reminder, if you're interested, that the next Santa Cruz County School Boards Association meeting is coming up Monday the 9th at 7 o'clock. So the Zoom link is in your email, but you can, if you can't find it, you're welcome to ask me for it. And it's a discussion, of course, about opening up to in-student instruction throughout the county. And there's going to be an update from Sacramento and a presentation by Dr. Sabah. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And I myself have nothing to report out on. So let's see, presentations. That's our next order item of order. How you say it, Scott? We're going to be presenting COVID-19 and distance learning. I think you're muted.
Thank you. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
All right, thank you. So definitely the topic du jour, right, is preparing to gradually bring back in-person learning, purposely kind of steering away from that phrase of reopening, because that brings to mind a larger scale reopening, and we're really taking this as gradual as possible. And so with that, we will go ahead and dive into the presentation. The topics we're going to cover tonight will be the blueprint for the safer economy that has put us in position to be able to do this. We'll do a visual overview of our district's return to in-person learning, and we'll take a look at some staff input data and some parent input data, all the while knowing that this is ongoing data. The surveys are still open, and the data that was in the board docket was up to the moment from when we published on Friday afternoon. And let's go ahead and move on here to, I know everybody knows about this, but it just seems like it's important to have this as the springboard for why we're in the discussion that we're in, and where our county is now, thankfully, gratefully, in the orange or moderate tier of the blueprint for a safer economy. This opens up a lot of possibilities, not only for the community at large, but for our school district. And it's why we're able to even engage in this conversation. So let's hope that we're able to stay in the tier or even move to the next tier down, which, if I remember, is yellow and mild. And it's all based on the case rate of COVID-19, of course. And there's, I guess it goes without saying that, just from the common sense perspective, there's all the, we've said from the beginning in summer, when we were planning for hybrid back in June, and I've said that this feels a lot like where we were in June, where we were really gearing up for hybrid, but not with blinders on, right? That we're monitoring the data and we're ready to pivot if we need to. And there's just that hope that the winter months and flu season and holiday gatherings don't equate to, a spike in the data. So we'll be monitoring that, and we'll change if we have to, but we have to take the data that we have now and plan accordingly and be ready to change. And that's what we're doing. So we tried to create a one-page visual that would give some hard and fast information to all stakeholders, community, parents, teachers, classified staff, on what we're planning. And this is along the way, this is one of the hardest things not to be able to give when we had less concrete data, and we'd have to say, well, we're kind of planning for this, and we had to use that loose terminology like unlikely to return before January. It's really hard to not be able to give people some definitive information. And so it was kind of refreshing to be able to put something down hard and fast. And of course, hard and fast, knowing that it could change, but at least some target dates. And so I'll just kind of go through this. It's purposely set up where on the left-hand side with how we're progressing through the colors, and on the right-hand side, how our county has progressed through the blueprint for a safer economy colors. And I hope that it's noted, and if not, I'll just call it out, that we're always kind of intentionally like 2 steps behind of what we could be doing, right? When we were back in purple, elementary schools could apply for a waiver to bring students back in person, and we didn't. And when we entered red, we could have started considering bringing small cohorts back, and we didn't. And when we were 14 days into red, we could have considered hybrid or even more students back, and we didn't, right? And now we're in orange, and we're going back, and now we're bringing those, or we have brought back those small cohorts. So it's really intentional to not just react like, okay, well, what can we do, and let's just automatically enact that. It's taking a more cautious and prudent and safe approach than that. And so you can kind of see that as the 2 colors schemes on either side, the way they line up. So starting at the top, in September and into October, we started face-to-face special education assessments, and that is now fully up and running, thanks to hard work from all of our specialists and from our director and student services, Eric Olson. and lots of support at the school site on getting the assessment rooms ready and everything. We did a lot of work with SEA on getting an MOU in place that made everybody feel comfortable and got that done. And even when necessary, bringing students in for diagnostics assessments that are not special ed related. Dr. Kiernan did that for a family that was just kind of curious about the student's placement based on their age, and brought a student in. So kind of got that ball rolling first. And then late October and now, and kind of thinking how things are going to go through December is the next chunk of things. So we formed a small easy for me to say, small cohort task force, as was mentioned previously, made up of classified staff members, certificated staff members, board member, site administrators, and district administrators, so that we could have a broad perspective on how to do it and do it right. And from that task force, the voice was loud and clear that one of the first groups that should come back for a double win was the children of staff. And so that not only got some of our students back in person in a learning environment, but freed up teachers and staff to be able to focus squarely on their job during the school day. True win-win. A couple of the next groups that we're working with are SDC students. I'm proud to say that we have worked really closely, had a great meeting today with just 3 phenomenal SDC teachers that form the K-8 cohort of SDC, and that's Peter O'Reilly and Kristen Jenkins at Main Street, who form our elementary SDC team, and of course Gordon Barrett at New Brighton. And we met with also with Eric Olson, and just really went through, got into the weeds. It was, and I just was really impressed at the flexibility that everybody came into that meeting with, because we were able to identify, we pre-surveyed SDC parents to ask who did want to come back for in-person services, who didn't. We're able to kind of organize those students into groups. And so we're going to have one of the elementary teachers teach distance learning to the students, to the families who don't want to have their children come for in-person learning. One of the other elementary SDC teachers do the in-person. We're targeting, it's a soft target. I almost hesitate to say this because things can change, and out of respect to the team, but I'll go ahead and put it out there. We're targeting September 17th as the day to bring those students back, those SDC students who do want to come back, back for in-person opportunities. And we're targeting 2 days a week to start, Tuesday and Thursday. And we feel like that will allow us to bring them back in a slow, gradual, and safe manner, and have a little bit of time in between the days where they're back to even tighten up our program more. Similar to what we did in summer school, that we can start with a soft opening, learn from it, and just be extra safe. So,
Excuse me, Scott.
Yes.
Could you just restate that date?
September. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. I don't know where September came from. November 17th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Wish we could go back in time, but we can't. So I feel like the SDC cohort is like, it's not only on track, but we really have the right people on track with it. And so that they were able to ask me questions that I hadn't thought of, and still a lot of work to do. There's, of course, the transportation is basically almost like creating a new school in some ways, because we have to create a whole new transportation route for those students who need transportation in the SDC cohort. But we'll get that done, and we'll get those students back on campus so that they can have a little booster of in-person learning. The next group that we're targeting as a group are English learners. And Jessica has done some work with Barbara Hubner, our ELD TOSA, and the ELD specialist. And we're not quite as far along as being able to say an actual date and everything, but that group is working to find ways that they can free up their schedule for part of the day from what they're doing now in distance learning, to bring back some of our EL students to work with our ELD specialists in an in-person environment. So those conversations are happening, not quite as far as long, but I'll be able to continuously update the board about where we are with that. The next group is a broader group, and that's students identified via multi-tiered system of support, which means a variety of avenues that they have been identified as needing support. And it's we have a simple form that we send out to teachers and ask them to identify students that would most need this if we can carve out the opportunity. And so it could be based on just challenges with distance learning in general, could be that they're an RSP student and need the extra support, could be for a variety of reasons that they're able to mark. We're also cross-referencing that against the coordination of services team model that exists at our school sites. So students have already identified in that forum that exists, as well as the reports that teachers do for attendance and engagement. So we have lots of different data that we can cross-reference and do our best to, prioritize the students that need this extra support the most. We wish we could offer, all the way down the list. We're in a position that we have to prioritize and offer it as much as we can. But we're taking that part of the process and the data involved very seriously. And so now kind of comes the creative part of this. Well, I'll back up even one step from that. We are working very collaboratively with SEA on an MOU to make sure that as we bring more and more students back on campus, that we'll have a very clear understanding, even above and beyond, what already exists with the guidelines that we're working under. So I anticipate that process, it's engaged right now, and I anticipate it to go very quickly. And so once we have that locked in, we have principals that are geared up and ready to get students back on campus, these MTSS identified students. So a couple of different ways that we're looking to optimize the staff that we do have available, because remember, obviously, we don't have a lot of staff just sitting around waiting for students to come in. Everybody's engaged in distance learning in one way or another. So we're looking at, for one example, taking that cohort of the children of staff that currently exist. Those programs are running at about 7 students each, the one at Main Street and the one at Soquel Elementary. We can have cohorts up to 14 students. And so those 2 programs are up and running very smoothly right now, knock on wood, thanks to all the hard work from the staff. And so there's some, you can look at it, there are some seats in there that we can fill with MTSS identified students. And so I anticipate that to be able to move, we can move very quickly on as early as the first part of next week. As soon as we kind of get the MOU part of it locked down, which again, I anticipate to go very fast. So we have those seats available. We also have our principals that are taking a look at all of their other classified staff to see how they might be able to rearrange their day and provide similar, kind of a different but similar cohort to the one we already have up and running for the children and staff. And that model that we established, again, seems to be working successfully, in that we have 2 staff always with the cohort. So that way it always, if one of the staff members needs to go actively screen a student in the parking lot before they come in, or walk a student to the restroom, or break for breaks and lunches, there's always, they always have the other staff member to lean on. And so that's the model that we're looking at. You can kind of clump these into supervision models, right? In that the goal of the classified staff in these cohorts is to supervise the students so that they're in a safe environment while the students are still receiving their distance learning from their teacher, through our platforms such as Google Classroom. And so we're looking to kind of emulate that as the next wave of cohorts. We also have considered the use of certificated substitutes as we exhaust our classified staff in those supervision cohorts. So we're being as creative as we can. The staffing, is part of the challenge. but we're being as creative as we can, and all of our administrators are looking at ways that they can work with their staff to kind of move their focus over to these cohorts. And so that kind of gets us to where we are with the cohorts. Also kind of in process right now is the resurveying of parents and staff about hybrid models. So we're kind of engaged right now with our cohorts, and then keeping an eye on the ball out there in the middle of January, getting ready for a hybrid model where we have about half of our students in-person learning on any given day, Tuesday through Friday. And I'll be sharing some of that data that's coming back from those groups. Taking every opportunity to carve out time for hybrid planning and professional development. And if you really think about what we've asked our teachers and staff to do, you know, going back to March, it's like change everything from in-person to distance learning, and then revamp distance learning as it relates to SB 98. And now, you know, hybrid is like a thing unto itself, right? It's not just a simple combination of in-person and distance learning. It's really a model into itself. And so it takes necessary devoted time for professional development and most importantly, collaboration time. And so we're looking at ways to adjust our schedules that can carve out some time for that. And SB 98 gives us that flexibility of you know, asynchronous and synchronous time together to meet the instructional minutes. So it gives us some flexibility with the schedule. And so we're going to be taking a look at that, and then planning in conjunction with staff the type of professional development and planning time they need to transition once again to a different learning model, hybrid. While we're surveying families, we're planning behind the scenes, brainstorming, looking for solutions that don't yet exist, but devoted to finding them for creatively addressing families in all different situations, including wanting to stay in full distance learning mode. So it's, you know, it's not an easy solution to just say, oh, these families want full distance learning. And so, but you're still in the same class while the rest of the class is doing hybrid. It's not that simple, right? And so, but we're committed to serving all of our families. And we don't really take it as our place to dictate to families how they should feel about coming back to school.
Can I ask you about the distance learning, the ones that choose, would they be there every day, Tuesday through Friday, or would they alternate with other students?
Would they be every day in distance learning Tuesday through Friday?
Yeah.
Well, so that's what families are indicating, that some families do not feel yet comfortable sending their students back for any in-person learning.
Right. So the hybrid is that there'll be alternating days. Then if somebody, so one day in class, one day distance learning, a family who opts to do distance learning only, will they be participating virtually Tuesday through Friday in the class, or will they be alternating days?
No, they still need 180 school days.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And
that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
but
thanks. Sorry.
No, it's all good. So, but it really gets to some of the crux of the questions, right? Is like it's those families. It's not as easy. Like it's not as easy that they can just tap in to the distance learning when their previous cohort class is doing distance learning that time, right? They're a different cohort, and so all of us, you know, across the county and the state are figuring that part out. And there's some ideas that I'll share as we get deeper into the presentation. So another part of this is getting input from all of the groups here in the district, from the district leadership team, the small cohort task force, CSEA, SEA surveys, ADCO, board. There's a lot of stakeholders, and obviously everybody has a stake in this more than most issues. And I mentioned the alternative schedule. So starting at the beginning of December, taking a look at, and New Brighton's already communicated this out. Their leadership team has crafted an alternate schedule to start to make sure that we're still compliant with SB 98, still providing quality education to students, but carving out more time for professional development and collaboration. So that starts, actually it's November 30th, but basically beginning of December. And then thinking about as we move into January, really again, taking that prudent, safe, and cautious approach to a hybrid model. I'm just, hoping that we stay, that the data stays the way it is. Taking that first week, taking the first chunk of January from the 5th to the 15th and staying in distance learning mode with the idea of like being off for winter break and then just starting a brand new program is not going to be a very smooth transition. So staying in distance learning mode, having those alternative schedules that have a little less synchronous time with students, but still meeting SB 98 requirements, and then continuing the planning and the training for a hybrid start. And then the day after Martin Luther King holiday, January 19th, starting with a soft opening in our elementary sites with our youngest students, TK, K, and first, and then at New Brighton with 6th graders. And then it builds from there, adding on grade levels as we go until the beginning of February, where we would have everybody back in, if you can call this term, a full hybrid implementation. So that's a lot to kind of cram on one page, but we wanted to be able to have something that people could look to and get the basic information all in one place. So now we'll take a look at some of the survey results. Again, these surveys are open. We're collecting the data right now, so there's been a lot more responses. But again, the data showed here is what was available at the time that we posted the board docket. So we'll start with certificated staff. And so at this point, there were 28 responses, and I'll just, oops, I guess I should move this over here. Presenting faux pas here. Just as a matter of reference, there's 53 responses to this now. Most of the data trends stay pretty consistent, so but just so you can feel confident that we are getting more and more responses to all of these surveys. And so here we just ask, it's not a commitment, it's just getting the tenor of the feeling tone of how our staff is feeling about coming back. This is a big deal. I always like to think about it. Back in March, I couldn't imagine closing schools. It was just like, I just couldn't imagine it. And now for some people, I know it's hard to imagine in the state we're in opening schools or bringing students back. And we're all over the place with that, and we want to honor that. It doesn't mean that we won't move forward, but I think it's important to know how folks are feeling. And so we just asked that very simple question with safety protocols in place. And if our county stays in the orange tier, how comfortable are you feeling about returning to hybrid instruction? And you can see that about 18% feel completely comfortable. Another 43% or so feel somewhat comfortable, but are ready to come back. And then about 40% or so not comfortable at all. And if there were some other option, they'd prefer to have that. And so we're all over the board, and that's understandable and expected.
Scott, can you expand your presentation to take up cover the whole screen?
Oh, sure. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's fine.
You can still see
Perfect. Okay, yeah, there now.
Yeah. Move this over here.
And Scott, sorry to interrupt, but so you're still seeing with the 50 some odd responses that you have right now, the same makeup for this question?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can give you a little update on that. Let me make sure I'm looking at the right data. Yeah, so the first question is, like, for example, the not very comfortable, not comfortable at all, with the updated data is at 33% instead of 39%. So I think it's a disservice to like bombard you with verbal numbers, but I'll try to give you a few that can give you some reference points. All right, so that's our certificated staff. Now let's take a look at our classified staff. Oh, no, I'm sorry. So the next question on the certificated staff was if you answered, and they could choose multiple answers to this. If you answered not comfortable at all to the question above, please indicate the reasons why. And so it's a smattering. Some is, the majority is either health concerns pertaining to them or someone in their immediate circle. Some are concerned that students won't follow protocols. And a handful just are, at that point on one end of the spectrum where they won't feel safe until there's a vaccine. It doesn't matter what the protocols are or how well we follow them. And so that's I think it's really important to know where folks are and to help them understand our protocols and how we can try to make things as safe as possible.
Phil has a question.
So Scott, so you can make more than one choice here, correct?
Yes.
So these numbers are kind of skewed. If I voted like only one, but the next person did 3, then you could see where an accumulation could happen. So we don't know what the biggest reason is. It could be health concerns for someone in my family, but it could also be the next one about students.
Well, and we felt it was important to let folks choose multiple options because you can feel all those things. So, and again, this is more to get the tenor of how folks are feeling, not necessarily to, identify which is the most important reason. I don't know. Did that answer your question, Phil?
Yeah, I'm just saying a 23 bits of data for 12 responses.
Mm-hmm. All right. So the next question would be, would you be interested in serving as a distance learning only teacher to families who choose that option? And I think it goes without saying, but we put it here just to be safe. Selecting this doesn't guarantee you a role. There's a process. This is all a puzzle that we're putting together as we're collecting data. How many families want a distance learning only option? How many teachers would be interested in teaching that? Is there any kind of match there? We want to do, anything we can do on the administrative side to make this puzzle work for everybody. We know you can't please everybody, but everything that we can do to make it work for as many families and as many staff members as we can, we're willing to put in the work to do that. And so one of the first parts of that is just collecting the data and seeing where there's matches and where there's not. And you can see here that, we have about 40% of folks who would say that they were interested and about 52% not interested. And then, some folks this doesn't necessarily apply to if they're not a classroom teacher. So this data is going to serve us in putting this big puzzle together.
Now the data is changing, correct? People are still coming in with their responses.
Yeah, I can give you a little brief update on that. So here on this question, there were 27 responses. We're up to 50 responses on this.
Okay.
And the data, it's about the same. Instead, in the blue, interested is 44%, whereas it was 40 on the docket. And it's down to 40% not interested. So skewing a little bit more not as interested.
Okay.
So, but again, the data is gonna, I don't think the data is good to kind of see a trend line, but it's really gonna help us put the puzzle together as much as anything. Another part of the puzzle we see as a possibility, don't know this yet because we haven't taken as deep a dive into the data until we close the survey. But thanks to the good work of Suzanne Denham and Lori Kearney and Jessica Kiernan, really have transformed what's happening via Opal Cliffs. I guess you can't really say at Opal Cliffs, right? But you get the idea. And have quickly transformed that into a home-based learning model, which is a real coup for the district. And we're just wondering, like, how might we be able to leverage that as a way to meet family desires and needs, right? It's not the same as distance learning. Distance learning is more direct instruction via the computer, to say it very simplistically. And Opal Cliffs is truly a home-based model where parents are the driving force in what students are doing during the day. And so that's not going to work for everybody. We can't just say, yeah, we're going to move all the distance learning families over to Opal Cliffs. It's not that simple. But at the same time, we don't want to leave that out as maybe that serves one cohort of families that go, we were kind of on the fence of being a more home-based approach. And if we're going to go virtually, this is the time to do it. Maybe we can identify one more cohort of students that are in that category, and we can work on the staffing to identify one more teacher. I don't know if that's the case yet, but that's the kind of flexible thinking that we're trying to use to see how we can meet both family and staff needs. And so you can see here, most folks are not interested in that kind of model as a teacher, but a few are, and that could be a match. So this is a grander question, and I'm going to tell you whether this is running about the same. Here it was running close to 50-50. This question about live streaming that I'll explain. Currently, we're up to 48 responses, and it's running closer to 60-40 not interested. But still a good chunk that are at least expressing an interest or an open mind. So it's been called different things, either live streaming or broadcasting, or I'm sure there's other terms. But it's essentially a hybrid model in which students are receiving the same instruction, whether they're physically in the classroom or on the other side of a screen. Of course, it's a lot tougher than that in actual implementation, but that's the general concept. And so that would be really hard to do with this static kind of camera that we're using right now, right? Like, could you imagine if I had 15 kids here and I'm teaching them a lesson and but I'm trying to teach 15 more through the camera, but I have to go over and help Johnny. Then I have to go back and say, that doesn't seem very practical, right? But there is technology that can help with that. And whether it's, a nice mesh with TK through 8 instruction, it's to be determined, but at least it's an opportunity. And so our County Office of Education is exploring this, and we are exploring it with them. There's different technologies for this. The particular one we're looking at is called the Meeting Owl. You can look it up on owllabs.com. And it's literally a camera that looks like an owl, almost like the size of like an Alexa Echo, the Amazon one. And this is a term I'm using. I don't know if it's the right term or not, but it's like a smart camera. So that rather than it being a static camera that I have to move in front of, it kind of follows the teacher. And they've used it in university to, so that when you want to take a Stanford course, whether you're in Palo Alto or you're in Guam, you can be engaged as much as you can with that particular course. And so it's smart also in the fact that you can tell it to, point at the whiteboard, point at this bulletin board, point at this. So I'm probably not doing near enough good job of explaining the advanced technology behind it, but I think you get the idea that it takes this idea of a static camera and it moves the possibilities along for, I guess what you could call a true hybrid experience to make it more manageable. And we haven't vetted it enough to call it manageable, but more manageable implementation of hybrid. And this could be a real game changer and a problem solver, right? Because rather than having to create just these completely different, you're a distance learning only student, you're a hybrid student, it could allow those two things to mesh if it doesn't create an inordinate amount of extra work for our teachers. So we don't know the answer to that yet, but we think it would be foolish not to explore it. And so we've invested in 4 of the systems to be able to pilot them with some of our tech leads. They're relatively plug and play. I know every time somebody says that, it's really not, but there is not a lot of infrastructure pieces that have to go along with it. It's not new fiber cabling or anything like that. And so it's a hopeful piece of technology. And what I've asked, when I have the opportunity to meet with our teachers association is, please just keep an open mind. Like I'm keeping an open mind to not say, oh yeah, this is easy, this is going to solve everything. I'm asking you on the other end to keep an open mind and say, no, that just sounds like a lot more work. Let's try it. Let's try it and see. And maybe it doesn't ease the demands of hybrid teaching, but maybe it does. And other districts in the county are also going to be looking at this technology. So we'll learn together whether it's a viable option for us or not.
So you said you ordered 4 of them?
Yes.
Okay. Do we get an education discount?
They're pretty much in high demand, so I don't think.
Yeah, I see. I looked at the website and one of them's already sold out.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, no, Ted. And if anybody could have done it, it would have been Pam, but she couldn't make it happen.
Yeah.
And so now let's take a look at our other very valuable staff, and that's the classified staff. Since there's not as much of the intricacies like with hybrid teaching, we just asked one simple question, and that's the comfortability factor. And I'm going to go over to my current classified staff. So at this time in the board docket, there were 18 people that responded, and currently there are 32. And so the numbers are, well, the numbers here in our presentation, you can see that over half folks here felt completely comfortable, and about a third felt somewhat comfortable. And at that time, just a small number felt not comfortable at all. Those numbers have shifted a little bit. Not as many feel completely comfortable. So about 15% or so less feel completely comfortable. There's a greater number, about half feel somewhat comfortable. So we still have the majority, large majority, red and blue, either completely comfortable or somewhat comfortable. We're running at about 18% of our 32 respondents that don't feel comfortable at all. So we'll work with them to identify what is it that is making them feel uncomfortable. And if there's some things we'll be able to do something about and address, other things like with that question of if it's just a matter of I won't feel comfortable until there's a vaccine, that's a different question altogether. So now let's take a look at how our parents are responding to our survey. And so the first, and let me tell you current numbers on this. And so at this time we had, at the time of the board docket, that's in the board docket, we had 251 responses, and now we're up to 434. So, and I'll try to give you an idea, again, without over inundating you with verbal assault of numbers, where the trends are similar and not similar. So the first question, the trends are very similar with our greater number of respondents. And that is with safety protocols in place, and if our county stays in the orange tier, do you feel safe sending your children to school for in-person learning 2 days per week? And you can see that we have about 50% that don't feel comfortable. And so that's where this match starts coming into play, is how best to serve those students and how best to optimize our staff options with that population. And again, those numbers have stayed pretty remarkably consistent, even with the greater number of submissions. The next question we asked our parents was if you answered yes to question 1, meaning that they feel comfortable sending their students back to school, which cohort they would they prefer. And we put at the beginning of the survey, just to be clear, that we are not considering AMPM at this time. And in the little video that I did kind of as a prelude to the surveys and other communication, I tried to make that abundantly clear. And when I met with our district leadership team, tried to make that very clear too, very directly. When we went through this process in the summer, AMPM was a preferred model from our elementary teaching staff for very sound reasons. Like younger kids, you want to see them more frequently to be able to get them in a routine. And I agree with that pedagogically 100%. What I heard over the course of the summer from very level-headed parent responses was it just wasn't practical. It wasn't practical like for the afternoon session, which we had kind of from 11:30 to 2:30. It was not practical for parents, very busy working parents, to try to make that work with childcare and then an afternoon session and then a pickup. And I was convinced with that is, not the right match for our parent community. And so at this point, we are only considering what's called an AB cohort, where it's 2 full days of in-person learning, not 4 days of either an AMPM model. So most of our parents would prefer the Tuesdays and Thursdays.
I think Phil has a question
Oh, I'm sorry, Phil.
up there.
In the future, would we consider asking about a Monday, Wednesday cohort?
Mondays are going to be distance learning only for all of our students, and that's kind of a reboot day. It also aligns with what Santa Cruz City is doing for them. It's a full distance learning day. So for families that have siblings in both systems, it lines up for them. It allows our teachers to meet with all of their students that day in one single setting, distance learning. And it also provides us some extra time for cleaning of classrooms, deeper disinfecting, that sort of thing. So that's a long answer. The short answer is no. And so you can tell most people want, I'm sorry, Phil, go ahead. Or did somebody?
So what are we going to do for the parents who don't want to come in on Wednesdays and Fridays?
Well, not everybody's going to get their first choice, obviously, right? So we'll do a vetted system of first we'll pull out that 10%, or I can tell you if it's probably hasn't changed much. Hey, it's all the way up to 11.7% now that want cohort B. We'll pull those folks out first, and more than likely assign them that cohort, and then we'll take a deeper dive into the folks that want cohort A and do our best to prioritize. Obviously, families of staff members that are there are a priority. Anybody on the front lines, working in hospitals, that sort of thing. We'll go through a vetted list. Again, this is you can't please everybody's situation, right? So we'll do our best to identify families that for one reason or another may need that Tuesday, Thursday. I know, everybody can make a rationale, but we'll determine the criteria. And then part of it will be a random, and not everybody will get their first choice. There's just no way around that, but we'll do our best to make it as fair as possible.
So just to clarify, the main reason is to align with Santa Cruz City Schools, because the other reasons could be switched to Fridays technically. Could be Friday, could be an all distance learning day. The cleaning could be done on Friday.
Yeah.
So
We
the
would
main
like,
reason is for alignment.
yes,
Correct?
that is correct. All right. So let's go on to the next question here. And so what we asked here is if you answered no to question 1, which I'll go back to just for reference sake. Oops. So question was, do you feel safe sending your student back to school for in-person learning? If you answered no, may we assume that you want your children to remain in distance learning only mode for the rest of the 2021 school year. And for the large majority, that's true. And that data is running very similar. There's a lot of other reasons. This is the one place where they could be open-ended comments. And so there's a lot of other reasons. Some families put in there that they wanted to consider Opal Cliffs and a variety of other reasons. So again, some of that we'll have to take a deep dive into the individual data. We asked about childcare because that's always a really important point in here. And these figures are running very consistent. About 20% of families still, not still, when we make the switch to hybrid instruction, are looking for ways to meet their childcare needs. And so we'll reboot that childcare task force. We've been letting our 2 key partners in CKC and the city of Capitola know where we are in the process. And so they're going to stay engaged with us. And if there's ways to practically meet those childcare needs, we have great partners that can help us with that. But it is definitely continues to be a tough part, tough challenge of many challenges. So I hope that gives you an idea of kind of where we've been and where we are and where we're going. with the gradual return to in-person services and why we're going at the pace we're going, and some of the decisions behind the processes we have in place. And I'll open it up for discussion.
Okay, I know we asked questions as you were moving along. So are we going to get updated data in Friday update of the surveys?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board?
I have a question. I'm wondering about roughly, how many families you think didn't answer the survey and what kind of outreach we'll be doing to get their responses.
Absolutely. A lot, because we're up to about 435 responses, and there's about 1,500 families in the district when you factor in siblings. And so there's obviously a lot that haven't responded. And once we start building our models, there's going to be outreach from each school to have to get input on everything from whether they feel safe sending their child back to cohorts. So it will take a lot of person power to get all that done, but we have to do it. We will do it.
I have one more question. For the earlier groups going back, some of our more vulnerable students with some higher needs, I understand that they would be supervised. I was wondering about any other in-person services that might be offered. For example, if there's a group of English language learners, will they be receiving in-person services to meet those needs, or what the thought is there?
For English learners specifically, that's one of the things I'm most excited about. Is our group of ELD specialists are committed to finding ways to carve out their current schedule so that there can be at least a little bit of time in person with some of our English learner students. And so that's the most obvious match, right? To have ELD specialists with English learners. And of course, all of our non-directly academic services like counseling can be available to students more readily when we have them with us on campus. And so we think that will allow us to better meet the needs of students outside of just the academic realm.
Thank you.
Is there, oh, go ahead, Carolyn.
I'm having trouble formulating my question, but will some of the rearranging require that classrooms as they exist now are no longer the same, and maybe even different sites, kids at different sites, if they're doing this full distance learning, are put together at different schools, I'm saying, but put together? I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah.
Is that a possibility?
So I'm going to do a short answer, long answer. Short answer, yes. The long answer is some of it depends on the viability of some of the options that we're talking about, like live streaming. If something like live streaming were to prove viable and manageable for our staff, that would reduce the need for those things that you mentioned. If it proves not viable for us, then almost inevitably there's going to have to be, for lack of a better way to say it, some reshuffling of the deck, because some of it depends on numbers. Let's just say, since we're allowing ourselves to brainstorm, 30 fourth graders across our district, families opt into a distance learning only model. Well, there's about a class, right? But that's a district-wide class. And so inevitably that's going to reshuffle the deck. And if we had a teacher, and again, this is, I'm allowing myself to think out loud. If we had a teacher that stepped into that role, if that kind of match works out, that teacher's current roster is going to have to be reshuffled out, right? So that's why I say, for clarity, because it sounds like a little bit of rambling, thinking out loud, the short answer to your question is yes. But there's a lot of thought going in to see how we might be able to mitigate that.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions, is there anything from, oh, Phil, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so I'm on the small cohort group and the task force, and I'm seeing where we're at now, and I'm thinking that maybe we ought to, maybe you and I and Scott ought to have a Zoom thing and talk about rebranding that the reintegration task force for the, I'll call it the beyond hybrid world. I don't know where we can call it normal again, but a new normal. And so start the planning for that, because we're kind of 2 steps behind, but we should also be looking at what that would look like. Essentially what Carolyn was talking about. So when we come back to beyond hybrid, are we going to keep some of those, cross-site structures? That's it. And I can meet.
Can I ask a question? If the live streaming for some reason doesn't pan, do we have any backup avenues or ideas to help with teacher prep? Should this all go accordingly?
So Alyssa, I think, what we mentioned about creating alternate schedules is our first attempt at that, right? Because we realize that hybrid is a different way to teach, and will take professional development, and it'll take collaboration time. And so that's definitely a part of it. And, perhaps there's also options and solutions out there that we haven't identified yet. So I think it's going to take a lot of putting our heads together at the staff level and at the administrative level, because right now that's what we're leaning into, is that either we're going to have to figure this out, and we're going to have to do it, just through learning about hybrid and planning for that. And we'll also have this, possible solution out there of perhaps live streaming helps simplify that.
Yeah.
Outside of those 2 things, if you have any great ideas, I'd love to hear them.
Oh man, not one that's going to fix a big obstacle.
Yeah,
like that. I was just wondering if you'd seen anything.
No, there's no magic bullets out there. It just gets more and more complex the more we're splintering off with how families feel about coming back. That's the challenge, but it's the challenge that districts have to meet.
Yeah. I did have one more question. I was just wondering maybe about timeline or process as far as, should we come back in January? What would be the next step as far as getting feedback from teachers, or, what will they do, and what we will do as a district to figure out what role they'll play in January? Like, when will that happen, and what will it look like to figure that out?
It's going to be happening consistently between now and January, for sure.
Okay.
At all of your staff meetings, we have our task force up and running. And so all of those forums where teachers are represented, district leadership team, I can't remember if you're on that team or not.
Yeah.
Good. So all of those forums are pre-existing forums that we have to put our heads together. We know it's going to take everybody's efforts.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just one more clarifying question. So if we don't go the route of the live streaming, is the alternative that on the days when the students are not in person, it would be 100% asynchronous, or is there something that is out there that I'm not thinking of? That
so it can't be 100% asynchronous because of SB 98 guidelines. What it would more than likely end up looking like is a minimal synchronous meet to meet those requirements, some outlining of the day, and then a majority of asynchronous work.
Okay. Huh. Do we have any comments from the public?
Let's see, I am looking at the text and I don't have any on text.
And nothing on email.
Nothing on Zoom.
Right. And nothing from Linda. All right. There was 3 of them there. Okay. So safe to say we can move on to our next item. All good. Okay, 5B, this is a discussion regarding the superintendent's evaluation process.
So in this, my 5th year, can't believe it's been that long, but I've been, you know, very pleased to have the board support me with a clear and detailed evaluation process. And so that you can see in the memo that timeline and that process has been, for the most part, replicated. And of course, you also have the board policy there on the evaluation of the superintendent.
All right, thank you. Board, I'm sure you've went over this. The dates look good. Thumbs up.
Looks good to me.
All right, and then as far as the policy goes, so I think as far as the timeline goes, it all looks pretty good. And we'll go from there. Are there any other questions or comments from the board?
I just want to know if we're still going to be Zooming in May and June. That's an unanswerable question.
Yeah, it'd be hard to say, but we'll find out. Yeah, that's gonna be a whole nother thing too. If there are no other questions or comments on this, we have our timeline here. Is there anything from the public?
I did not have anything on text.
And nothing on email.
Nothing on Zoom.
Okay, thank you. With that, let's gonna move on. We're gonna move on to discussing 3 policies which pertain to exposure control plan for bloodborne pathogens. And Scott.
Yes, so our wonderful personnel coordinator, Sandy Figueroa, puts this together for us. So I want to give her a shout out for her work in
Good job, thank you.
Yeah, keeping our board policies up to date. And so this one is a pretty straightforward update that ensures that our control plan for bloodborne pathogens is consistent with our injury and illness prevention program. And there's also some updates regarding some of the references and sites,
Right.
as well as hepatitis B vaccination requirements and other specific items to make sure all of this lines up to keep our employees safe. And so getting into the actual document, you can see that there has been some of what we can loosely call wordsmithing, but that, for example, at the bottom of page 42 of the docket, it clearly defines that these things should be in line, the exposure control plan and the injury illness prevention plan. And then just a few updates on some of the references that all of this is based on. So keeping all of these things that we have to do on an annual basis up to date with current legislation and current updates.
So did you say staff has to have hepatitis B shots? Or did I misunderstand you?
No, just the training around hepatitis B vaccination is covered in here.
Okay. Oh, okay. That's okay. Any other questions or from the board? Phil.
Okay, so my question is, it says in this policy, employees, would that include contractors and volunteers also?
No, these are contracted, like are classified and certificated and administrators. And that's the reason there's the 3 policies of 41, 42, and 43 It's for those 3 job groups.
Right, okay. Kind of covers it all. Any other questions or comments? Okay, with that, is there anything from the public regarding this?
Nothing on text.
Nothing on email.
Nothing on Zoom.
All right, thank you for checking. With that, let's move on to 5D, and this is a discussion regarding board policy on physical education activity and first reading, and this is with Jessica. Are you going to take it over, Scott, or should it be tabled?
No, Michelle has graciously agreed.
Oh, that's right, that's right. Okay, Michelle. Sorry.
So yes, I'm going to take over Dr. Kiernan's 4 board updates, the next 4 coming up, and please be kind to me because I had 10 minutes to learn them. So on our first one, this is new law for physical education as that's part of the uniform complaint process, and also expands the list of duties for physical education coordinators instruction as they give the tests. And I'd also like to point out on page 45 and 47 at the bottom of the page, of each of those pages, there's a reference to 9 through 12 high school, and that was an error left in there, so it'll be removed the second read.
Okay, so all the high school, because there's a few other, I think, reference to high school age students, those are going to be removed as well?
Correct.
Okay.
And then I think there was a few updates to the reference pages.
Right, okay, Phil.
So, sorry.
No, I said you had to be nice.
Okay. So I'm gonna guess there's gonna be no quick answer to why they cut the 50% minimum of sweat time, but I'm curious.
No, can't answer that one.
Where did you see that, Phil?
Yeah.
That's on page 45.
45 of the docket. I'm sorry, and I don't want to drag the meeting out, but can you point where the a particular paragraph?
It's the second to the
Second paragraph from the bottom.
Yeah.
Oh.
It looks like maybe because they added in the aerobic muscle strengthening and bone strengthening activities, so that's maybe why they took out the 50%.
But we're going to cut that out.
That's what I mean. So that's why they cut out the 50%, because they included additional activities.
But we're going to cut out additional activities because it refers to grades 9 to 12. So that's going to go away.
I don't think that's what it means, Phil. I think it means that before it was just vigorous physical activity had to be for at least 50%, whereas now they've added so many things that it's going to take 100% of the time. What else are they doing? They're going to be doing vigorous activity. They're going to do aerobic muscle strengthening, bone strengthening. That's going to add up to 100% pretty much.
Well, also says age appropriate too. There.
So before it was one fraction of all those things needed to be at least 50%, whereas now they've added things that are probably gonna take up the whole time.
Yeah, I think that does seem to be the reasoning to me, and then we can have Jessica follow up with that, Phil, to answer your question for sure.
And at least for high school physical education, minutes were waived in SB 98. So if you're really mourning the loss of physical education minutes, though.
Oh, the amount of minutes that are required?
Yeah, it's a separate conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Is there any other questions or comments from the board regarding this? Do we have anything from the public?
Nothing on text.
Nothing on email.
Nothing on Zoom.
Okay. And then with that, so then the high school info will be removed from the next meeting when we do when we approve the policy.
Correct.
Okay. All right, gang. With that, let's move on to 5E. This is discussion regarding board policy about individualized education program. Say that. I can't even say that. Say it.
IEP.
There we go. Wow, I didn't even think of that. Okay.
Yes, this is me too. So this is going to be it consolidates lists of IEP requirements. There's about 3 components to this update on this policy. The next component would be a new law to reflect added language to the IEP that outlines a plan for services if in-person services cannot be given for more than 10 consecutive days. And this is an update with SB 98 requirements. And also a new law to expand core curriculum when developing an IEP for blind, low vision, or visually impaired students, and also to provide them assistive technology devices for up to 2 months when transferring out of our district to another. And this typically applies when we have an outgoing 8th grader into 9th grade, and they keep the devices over the summer.
And then they return them when they go into 9th grade.
Yes, okay. George's team hunts them down.
Okay, all righty. Anybody have any questions regarding this? Board members? Okay. There was something, but I guess I could always get back at another time. With that, are there any comments or questions from the public?
Nothing on text.
Nothing on email.
Nothing on Zoom.
Okay. Thank you. With that, let's move on to 5F, discussion regarding board policy 6159, procedural safeguards for special education. Again, Michelle.
Me. Okay, a couple different components on this one as well. This is, make sure I'm getting the right notes here, clarifying due process complaints filed with the State Office of Administrative Hearings. Also new regulations which establish a complaint process separate from the UCP for complaints alleging non-compliance with federal or state law as it relates to FAPE. Free and appropriate public education for our acronym users out there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And the third component of this is an update for non-public agencies, NPSs or A's or schools, that requires that if one of our students is placed in one of these programs, we are required before placement to evaluate the program and then annually every year have a evaluation and on-site visit.
Okay. I always wonder who comes up with the acronyms. I mean, is there like a whole acronym committee appointed by the governor, and they sit around and they all day long they come up with acronyms?
Well, you know, the most important part of coming up with a good acronym is you've got to make it sound good. So that's why you got to pick your letters appropriately first, and then you make the words fit after.
I'm still thinking about LBOP. I'm pretty sure that's what you said at the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It sounds like a pop song.
Yeah, I know. Ready to sing it, huh? Okay, on task. Any other questions regarding this from the board? I see all mutes. Anything from the public?
I'll go first. Nothing on email.
Okay.
Sorry, I was reading. Nothing on text.
Nothing on Zoom.
Okay, all righty, all right. Okay, I just have to check. Okay, thank you. Okay, let's move on to 5G. And this is regarding policy point 2, non-public, non-sectarian school and agency services for special education.
Oh, see, and I thought I could get through all 4 of these without messing up. I totally just did my spiel for number 3 for number 4. Yes. This one is on the NPS, NPA, non-public school and agency, where there's a max term now on the master contract, and that you have 20 days for termination and the annual visit when placement. I tacked that on to number 3, sorry.
Okay, let's see, is there any comments or questions from the board regarding this? Phil?
So does this, sorry, Michelle, but probably more for Scott. Does this give us more oversight on those contracted agencies?
No, I haven't explored it at that level, to be completely honest. And so, but I'd be glad to research that and get back to you.
You know, you can save that for spring time or something. I do have another comment. And so on page, let's see, 58.
Mm-hmm.
You're muted, Phil.
I was waited with bated breath.
You're muted, Phil.
This is fine because it's targeted at special ed, but is there somewhere else in our board policies where we say FAPE for all?
FAPE is generally, I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. I would be surprised if it wasn't, but FAPE is usually used in the context of special education and making sure that those students have access to all the services designated in their IEP.
And the reason I bring it up because I believe FAPE for all has would have some kind of impact on educational equity. But that, let's not get off track.
No, that is the thrust of what it's intended to cover, for sure.
Okay. If there's no other questions or comments from the board, anything from the public regarding this?
Nothing on text.
And nothing on email.
Nothing on Zoom.
Thank you for checking. Okay, so we're going to move on to our action items, and these action items are all second readings. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce it. Each item, there's 3 of them. And if you have any comments or anything to add to the presentation, do so, or else you could just say no comment and we'll move on. So we'll start off with 6A. Let's consider approval of the proposed district representatives to the SELPA's Community Advisory Council, CAC. And this is Eric. Is he here?
No, I'm going to take this one for him. So
Right.
we are in a record-setting year for CAC representatives for our district. Usually it is a challenge to get 1 or 2, and I believe this puts us up to 6, which is great. Participation on the CAC and being more involved at what the SELPA governs and what the SELPA offers is only a positive thing. And talking to Eric, I was just kind of like, what do you think it is? Just we have a more engaged group, and that is definitely a part of it. But then he also recognized that, having virtual meetings and that sort of thing, while it certainly has its drawbacks, also allows families and parents that are, have busy schedules to have a better chance to engage in meetings that they may not be able to get to physically. So, and this is, I just was reading the memo again, this is our 6th volunteer. So only better to have more engagement.
Okay.
And these appointments have to be board approved. So we would love to have Aisha Statula be a part of our representatives on the Community Advisory Council.
Great. Okay. Any questions or from the board? Any comments or questions?
Just a thank you to her for stepping up.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, if there's none other, before I call for a motion, is there any public comment?
Nothing on text.
Nothing on email.
Nothing on Zoom.
All right, thanks for checking. All right, so I'm going to call for a motion to consider approval of proposed district rep to the SELPA Community Advisory Council. Is there a motion on the floor?
I'll make the motion. This is Amanda.
Amanda first.
I'll second. Carolyn.
There you are. Carolyn second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Still ayes. Any opposed? None. Okay. Let's move on to 6B. We're going to consider approval of board policy 3555, nutrition program compliance. Second reading. Michelle, anything you need to add to this?
Just to make the comment that the apostrophe was added in for districts.
Yay.
Great. Okay.
I'm not gonna lie, Carolyn, I'm a little traumatized over apostrophes now.
No,
but we got it.
doing that. Okay, with the apostrophe added, is there any other questions or comments from the board? If none, anything from the public regarding this?
Nothing on text.
And nothing on email.
Nothing on Zoom.
Okay. With that, is there a motion on the floor to approve the board policy 3555 nutrition program compliance?
I move.
Bill, set first, second.
I'll second. Carolyn.
Carolyn. All right. There's a first, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Okay. Last action item is 6C, consider approval of board policy 4112.2 certification. And this goes to Scott. Is there anything to add to this?
Nothing to add except that the corrections that were identified at the last board meeting have been fixed in this second
Right.
reading.
And all looks good. Okay. With that, is there any comments or questions from the board? Or discussion? No unmutes. Anything from the public?
Nothing from text.
Nothing on email.
Sorry, nothing on Zoom.
All right. All right. Thanks for checking. All right. That's it with our action items. Any correspondence?
Well,
Wait, what?
didn't we have to vote on that one?
I always do this at the last one. Okay.
It's okay.
Do we have a first and second?
I'll make the motion.
Oh my God, make the motion. Thank you.
I'll second.
All right. I'm looking at my telescope. I'm sorry. All right. So, all right. We have a first and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. All right. I did this on the last one before too. All right. Thank you for, I was just actually testing you, Jen, so you pulled it off. Thank you. Any correspondence?
I don't have any correspondence this evening.
Okay. Any, the board like to submit? None. Okay. Future agenda items? Oh, Phil, do you have something?
It's not a future agenda item. I just want to let the board know that CSBA Delegate Assembly is meeting with our CSBA president on November 13th. So we're going to Zoom with her. Any questions, comments, anything you want me to say to her face, whatever, just send me an email.
Say regarding anything.
Mostly public education stuff, but I'm open to,
Not the Dodger game. All right.
She
All right,
is from down there.
All right, with that, is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll make the motion.
Carolyn?
I'll
I'll
second.
Amanda got it.
1, 2, 3.
All right,
Okay.
all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None.
See ya.
All right, with that, have a good evening. And
Thank you all.
We'll Zoom again.
Thank you, everybody.
Good meeting, Ted.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alyssa.